with DJ Shine and Sister Dubon. So if you're in the area of New York, Brooklyn especially, and you're a recording artist or need a great studio to record in, please come on down to Flatbush. I'll put the address in the description and we hope to see you. And for the best spiritual reader in Brooklyn, in New York, Sister Dubon, this is definitely the place to come. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us your attention, because that's something that you can't get back. And today, I am joined by a special guest, very talented young lady. Her name is Shelly. Before we get into the subject matter, which I think everyone will enjoy, I just wanted to give her the platform to showcase a great singing voice, you know, and some of her products that she has for the business that she runs, because it's all about supporting each other. Shelly, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us. So, you know, give us a little number.
Hold on 1 second. I think they rewired something in
Getting our professional on.
here. I think they rewired something in here.
No problem, no problem.
You said I was singing. Why you introduce me like that?
I mean, when you
Who said I was
He ready to put
singing?
you on the spot.
when you blow
I
up,
mean, I
you know,
didn't say
you're
that.
gonna have special requests. You gotta have stuff on tap, you know. So all the subscribers of the channel, all the people tuning in, this is what we're gonna be doing from now on. Surprises, different individuals with great talents. Because as the commerce changes and the money changes, we're gonna have to learn to support ourselves without a job and make do without being dependent. But we'll cover that in another video.
Alright, I'm ready now.
All right, we are ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
So Shelly's gonna give us a taste of her voice.
He's saying I'm gonna sing right now, but that's not what I came to do. I came to talk about the issue at hand.
Okay, so Shelly's being shy, so
I might sing a little number after we discuss what we have to talk about.
we're gonna make sure we good. Pardon us for the technical difficulties.
And thank you, King and Queen Radio, for having me. It's a pleasure.
I think you all are gonna enjoy this topic. This is I didn't even plan on doing this subject matter that we're gonna cover, but I think it's very necessary. A lot of you know that tune in that I deal with staged events and how these events are planned in advance. They're like a big movie. We still on, Sean? So the subject for today is how Hollywood turns black male or black heroes in general, or black male heroes into villains, primarily through the use of media. And I'm gonna focus on 3 primary examples to show how you have great institutions or great people of color that have done great things, but over time, once those individuals have passed, Hollywood has a way of changing the narrative and making them look in a unfavorable light, whether they be villains, buffoons, coons, things of that nature. So we're gonna cover, the first one we're gonna cover is Hannibal. I know you all seen the movie Hannibal, Hannibal Lecter. We're gonna show how that's also a good demonization of a great black hero. And the other one, we all heard of Freddie Gray, the black man that you know, died of mysterious causes through the hands of the police in Baltimore. We're gonna cover the real Freddie Gray throughout history. And lastly, we're gonna cover Amos and Andy and show how they used that show to take down a great institution that helped civilize a lot of black people. So with that, for those of you that don't know, Hannibal Lecter, remember that movie, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that movie, it was a good movie.
Very deep movie. You know, it just made you think, like, wow, this is some real shit.
Yeah, it was actually based on a real story. Yeah, it came from the book. The author actually went to Mexico, and he went to a prison, and he found a person that actually was convicted of murder, and he actually did that. He actually killed a person, chopped him up, and buried him, and a part of that was cannibalism. So not to go too much into the real Hannibal, but that's what the book was based on.
And I think that's just also a metaphor to what they do to the black male figure in our society.
Like what, eat them up?
Just eat them up. You understand what I'm saying? Eat them from the ground up. Leave them with no leg to stand on. And then turn around and point the finger. So we'll get into that.
No, I mean, that's true. It's definitely a metaphor for swallowing up black people just being a citizen in this country. But what got me was, if you watch the movie, there's a lot of black symbolism in Hannibal in terms of the picture. When one of the scenes, they had a picture of Abraham Lincoln and John Kennedy, and those are two presidents in history that have changed the destiny of blacks. So that's what made me, really look into this more. And for those of you that don't know, that there was another Hannibal throughout history. His name was Hannibal Barca. He was a great black general that, from the Carthaginians, and he actually was a great military strategist. And he actually helped conquer Rome, and he was known for riding elephants and actually crusading across that part of the country and actually civilizing that part of the country.
That's not what they teach you in history class, because
they don't mention Hannibal.
They don't talk about this.
At all.
And you're never going to hear about it unless you do your own research. You're never going to hear about it unless you dig out your own knowledge. You have to search your own knowledge of yourself. You understand what I'm saying? Because they're not going to teach it to us in our classrooms. They're going to give us a little textbook, George Washington, Christopher Columbus bullshit. You understand? That's not going to work. Do your own research, know yourself, know the great people that you come from, which are the African people.
That's right.
The black race.
And that's why I like looking at Hollywood, because if you look at Hollywood differently, it's actually a better teacher than the school system. Hollywood has a way of putting so many things in there through symbols that there's a wealth of knowledge and history through Hollywood. So as I'm looking at it, I'm like, why would they name this character Hannibal if the real Hannibal was Mexican? That didn't make sense to me. So I said, let me look into, if there's any connection between Hannibal and cannibalism.
Yeah, we can break it down.
So as I look further, because even when you hear about Hannibal, they don't tell you everything. Because if you talk to a lot of Italians, mentioning Hannibal's name is taboo. Because a lot of Italians, they have, those kind of mannerisms that are similar to black people. And, a lot of that is because Hannibal civilized that part of the country. So a lot of Italians don't want to admit that, they're descendants of that. But as I researched Hannibal more, I realized that one of his generals suggested cannibalism in order for them to survive. And I said, oh, wow, I see the connection now. Because when they was going to conquer...
How can you relate that to a modern sense? You can relate that to a modern day sense in what way? Because that was pretty profound what you just said. I don't know if you just heard that, but that whole statement was pretty profound in the sense that we're eating each other even till this day as black people.
That's
Maybe
true.
we're biting off of each other. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we're nibbling at each other's success. Maybe we're not being as supportive as a group as we could be to one another. Maybe there is some division. You know what I mean? And what can we do to fix that? What can we also do to fix that? Because there was always a solution.
Well, this is definitely a solution. Just learning, because a lot of times we try to fix the problem, and it's so deep that we don't even have the basic approach, Like when you watch this movie Hannibal Lecter of this white male eating people, that's just another way to me of Hollywood taking history of this great black man, named Hannibal, that was a great general.
And demonizing him and turning him into a man-eating villain.
That's heavy.
Well, I mean, it's expected. I mean, you say it's heavy, but I say it's expected.
Why you say that?
You should know, in a society that we live in, you should know that everything that we do is always being watched. Particularly as Black people. I mean, we're being watched.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? This is just a fact. Stop and frisk, you know what I'm saying? You know, stopping without probable cause and unlawful search. This is stuff that just happens on a regular basis for us just because of the fact that we have dark skin. And we have darker skin. We're Black people.
Well, what do you think of
We're subject to scrutiny, we're subject to ostracism, we're subject to racial discrimination. What do we not endure?
Well, most people say that we're complaining. That, you know, we have
it's
it
not
better
a
than we
complaint,
did.
it's a reality. At the end of the day, you just have to state the facts, and the facts are on the table. If the statistics are adding up, and we're the ones that are majority locked up, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And majority getting locked up for petty crimes and just things that are on the charts. Look at the facts. Look at the statistics. We are subject to daily scrutiny under the law that we didn't create for ourselves. It was made by someone who doesn't like us. You know what I'm saying? This is something that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and sometimes I feel like that can mess with your mind, that can mess with your psyche as a human being. You have to be a really strong individual to have to deal with being Black in America.
How do you think Hollywood contributes to that?
I mean, even if you look at colorism, you know, we look at it within our own community. We look at the whole racial divide between light skin and dark skins. Look at that. Right there, that's a prime example, you know, of us, even within our own community, expressing the racist views that our outsiders have for us. You understand what I'm saying? Like people that don't come from our background.
That's true. That's true. And that's why I tend to look at everything you just said. I think one way to change it, though, is to change the narrative of how people look at us.
Now, don't get me wrong. You know what I'm saying? There's success to be had in this country. You know, we can go very far places that we once were not able to go. And I give our ancestors credit for getting us to that point. But what I'm saying is, internally, there's still a lot of restructuring that has to be done within our community.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that in the sense that we need to start building within our own community, our own businesses. We need to support our own businesses, first of all, you know, because it's not going to last if we're not being supported within our own community. If you go into the next person's store, how are we going to make it? Come to our businesses, support our businesses too.
But I think that comes from a sense of race pride. If people don't have that, then they don't even see the necessity of shopping in their own neighborhoods, their own businesses. You know what I mean? So what do you think is a good way to instill race pride, to have them support their own?
Racial pride, I mean, you have to instill community. I feel like this topic can go on for a long time, but I feel like you need to instill a sense of community organization. Like you need to have events. You need to have community reach out programs. You need to have things where the community is getting involved in actively trying to work towards a common goal. There needs to be some type of group or some type of, you know, league or whatever you want to call it. There needs to be some type of coalition of people that work towards the progression of, you know, people in minority areas, the people that are in areas that are predominantly African American and, Latino, we need to work within our own community, reach out to each other. We need to create events, organize, get things back to where they need to be so that we can start progressing financially, spiritually, emotionally. I mean, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in the hood. You know what I'm saying? In the hoods. Let's just keep it real. I mean, we could talk all day about, restructuring, and we could talk all day about how we have so many problems that need to be fixed, but it starts with us. It starts with each individual. We have to reach out. We have to be part of the community. We have to be active. You know what I'm saying? And as far as the, demonization of black men in Hollywood is concerned,
they have something that they have their own. And that one thing that they have their own is their history, their spirituality, and their culture. And what I noticed is that Hollywood was a way in which the Jews were able to reinvent themselves to the world. You know what I mean? They did it through religion by taking religion that wasn't theirs, and they took it as their own to give themselves a structure. But they created Hollywood, and I noticed that they are in charge of the images that we see. And therefore, through those images, we see different ethnicities how they want us to see them. So that showed me that mythology is a good teaching tool to help bring a culture back to a people that don't identify with their culture. And that's why I wanted to do this topic, because all of these events that we see are planned decades in advance. I always say that we're living in the 1960s 2.0. If you take everything that's happening now, you'll see that it parallels the 60s. The only difference is it's on a more sophisticated level. This country started staging events as if they're real since the 60s. That's when they practiced, Like I always say, the Kennedy assassination was a mock staged event that was ritualized and planned. And from that event, most of the events that you see have been created through think tanks. So that's why I wanted to highlight these three examples, because when you look at a movie like Hannibal, you'll see a sophisticated individual that did sophisticated killing, right? But if you look at the Hannibal through our history, he was also a sophisticated killer, but he was a general and he was a black man. So they took a story that was based on a Mexican and named this cannibal after a black man. So anytime you think of Hannibal, it's going to overshadow or cloud this great black general that existed hundreds of years ago. If you really think about that, that's heavy. That takes a lot of forethought. That takes a people that understand the power of perception and the power of handing down images to control people for generations to come. So whenever you go back into your history to find out the truth, you have to fight through images of a cannibal that's a Caucasian man named after a black man. That's some heavy psychological warfare. So that's why I decided when I make these videos to use Hollywood as a way of showing people how to become more symbol literate. Because in your life, everything in your life is symbols and patterns, right? The problems you go through are cyclical. The people that's in your life, they have patterns. If you look at everyone you attract, the people seem to have similar tendencies until you learn your lesson. So watching Hollywood and being able to look at the symbols in Hollywood, you can actually apply it to your life. So that's why I wanted to do this. So Hannibal was the first example that I wanted to bring up. So for those of you, I won't get too detailed into who Hannibal was, but
that's pretty deep. I mean, to take such a grand character in our history that we consider, a hero, and to just take him down to a vicious, carnivorous, cannibal. You know, that hurts. That's like, oh, you did that. That did take a lot of thought.
It did.
That took some effort, and that took some planning, and that definitely took a lot of brain scheming to think like, let's drag them down a little bit. Let's remind them that even your best character is our worst character. You know what I'm saying? And that to me is really low.
That's heavy though.
It's really low because it is the power of perception. You know, the perception of what we see on TV and what we consider to be, you know, good and bad and what's normal. It is perception. That's exactly what it is.
But think about it though. If we're not on that level, there's no way.
People are gonna automatically associate Hannibal with somebody that's a bad person or a bad character because they've seen the movie Hannibal. And in reality, in history, since you want to, use this as an example, in reality, in history, that would have been considered our hero.
Yeah.
As a black nation, as a black, community in that time. He, fought the Romans. The Romans were the most powerful empire in the world. They had conquered Germania, they had went and conquered Spain, they had conquered France. The Romans, they were in England. So, to go against a power that great at that time was very historic, was very monumental, was very endearing. It was just, is that a word? It was very, very bold and prideful. You know what I'm saying? To
that's that word again.
To have that strength and that mental, courage to be able to say, you know what, look, I don't give a damn how much you conquered. I'm still gonna fight your ass, cause I don't agree with what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? And that is what it is.
Now look what you said. Imagine hearing about such a gentleman as a young black child, black male, black female, you young, and you see that this man did all of this. Imagine the type of pride that's instilled in that child. They'll have no other image in their head but to build their own business and do all of the things that you said we needed to do. You see?
It'll make them feel invincible. It takes away the role models that we look up to as a way to encourage ourselves, as a way to give us something higher to look up to than ourselves. You know what I'm saying? We'll be like, oh, I really looked up to, if, for example, I hate to bring him in this equation, but I don't know if we would want to cover this much ground tonight, but Bill Cosby, you know what I'm saying? As we looked up to him, but then, all these women come out of the woodwork years later talking about that he did this to them. It hurts because the media highlights stuff like this too. When stuff like this comes out, the media drags it. And it's almost like, make sure you see, you know what I'm saying? Your biggest role model wasn't who he said he was. You don't have any real role models. We don't really want you to have role models except for the ones we feed you.
That's true. I mean, and Bill Cosby's a recent example. So you can see how the programming to tear down archetypes and role models is something that not only stems from the past, but it's an ongoing agenda from individuals that control how we see things. And the biggest tool for that is the media, is Hollywood. Whether it's Hannibal or Bill Cosby, that's a span of pretty much 2,000 years that's condensed through Hollywood to reshape history, If you really sit and think about that, that's power. So
and to make you as a black man or black individual look down at what you thought was a role model.
Right.
And to make you not appreciate what they tried to do in society and not appreciate the road that they did stand. It's almost like to cut them off at the legs and to cut off everything that they tried to reach for to try to build the black community.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a separation. It's like a division. That's what it is. They want you to have no role models except for the ones that they feed you. You get fed what we want you to know, and that's the end of it. You won't have anybody else to look up to except for the ones that we tell you to look up to.
And that's why, based on what you said, it's good to not be a passive watcher of these movies, of these TV shows, of music, because if you are, you're just receiving this indoctrination. And you mentioned Bill Cosby, they don't even mention the fact that he beat his cases so far.
Yeah, he beat his cases, but you don't see that being blasted in the media. I mean, the good stuff they don't want to highlight. It's just the negative stuff. It's like if you ever see, this is a prime example, if you ever see those, commercials about African children.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've all seen those. I mean, we've all probably shed maybe 1 or 2 tears and, seeing a kid
Save
drinking out of a pond that looks like dirt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, flies on their face.
Yeah, but they highlight the negative. They haven't shown you the beautiful parts of Africa and the capitals of some of the countries in Africa and how much commerce is booming through some of those cities and how much business is being done amongst black men, black people living in these cities. They don't want to show you that. They don't want to show you the Maseratis and the Bugattis and the Aston Martins that some of these African business owners are driving around over there. They don't want to show you that. You know what I'm saying? They'll show you the kid with the big belly drinking out of a muddy pond before they'll show you a role model that you would look up to and you know what I'm saying, and be inspired by. There's kings and chiefs in Africa. There's women that are beautiful, that look flawless in Africa. Africa has the abundance of everything on earth.
There's actually more black African billionaires than any other, if you want to call black. Africans have more billionaires that you would consider black than any other place in the world. So again, that's another thing that like you said, they demonize Africa, they demonize anything black, but we can actually change the perception, This is a war of perception, most definitely. If you could change the narrative of what people believe about you and what people believe about your ethnicity, then you can actually have a clear picture of how to navigate. So that's a good point. Mm-hmm. Another example I wanted to bring up was Freddie Gray.
This case just particularly made me so sad because I look at the way that they broke his spine and they drug him, mm-hmm. and how he just intensely screamed in pain. His face just looked like he was in agonizing, excruciating pain, and how they continued to drag him and conduct themselves, in a way that's just completely inhumane, completely ridiculous, and completely dehumanized way. You understand what I'm saying? Towards this young man. And that case, it really brought a lot to my mind because I'm just like, you know what? I knew that racism existed, but it didn't really hit me until after the Freddie Gray case. It didn't really hit me until after that. Because I'm like, the boy was practically dismembered. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And people got away with that. It really just struck me, and ever since then, I've been thinking about ways to combat it and ways to help, help alleviate racial tension and racial divide in this country. That case was heavy. That case was definitely a heavy case.
You see that feeling you have, though? That's the feeling that they want you to have. Because I tell people to ask themselves this question, right? Police do all type of stuff every day. What is it about these particular people and stories that makes it to where they want to broadcast this constantly on the airwaves?
Of course, they want to broadcast it because they have to get the message out. The message has to be shown. This is what you are. This is what we're going to do with you. There's nothing you can do about it. The message has to be shown. It's an intimidation tactic. It's a fear tactic. It's an attempt to create a sense of fear towards those in an authority. It's to create a sense of submission. It's to subdue any thoughts of fighting back or any thoughts of equality. It's honestly it's a mental game. It's a mental strategy.
Definitely fear. But they even the people that run the media they have so much resources and know history so well that they take names. These people are Kabbalistic, astrological, numerological magicians. So they don't put these cases in front of us for no reason. Every name, like I always say in my other videos, every summer they plan race. Summer is the time for racial tension. So they stage these events. They put these things out in the summertime to incite. And I broke that down in the other video. After summer, you don't see no racial things in the news. That's deliberate. That's from the 60s. But it's even further when you take these names like a Freddie Gray, because most people don't know the original Freddie Gray that was in the civil rights movement. There was an attorney named Fred Gray, and we all know about Rosa Parks. We know about the civil rights movement, the bus boycott. Most people don't know that Rosa Parks was not the first black person to protest on the bus. They chose her because Rosa Parks was a part of something called the Highlander Folk School. She was classmates with Martin Luther King. And these two individuals, this was a communist school that trained individuals on how to properly protest and incite civil unrest. So Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King were trained people to plan protest, okay? So I want to lay that foundation before I get into who the original Freddie Gray was. The first person to actually resist getting off the front of the bus was a 15-year-old black girl named, her last name was Colvin. She was 15 years old. And she actually resisted 9 months before Rosa Parks. But because she was feisty and she had an attitude, that narrative wouldn't fly. And because Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King were trained protesters, they co-opted that and then they took it. Now, why is that important? That's important because the lawyer that represented those individuals, Miss Colvin and Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, when they was going to court for them protesting on the bus, his name was Fred Gray. So if you look at the attorney, Fred Gray, he was a big factor. He was Johnny Cochran before Johnny Cochran. So most of these issues in the civil rights movement, he was the go-to attorney. He represented the big names, the Rosa Parks and the Martin Luther Kings. Also, if you heard of the Tuskegee experiment, for those of you that don't know, Google it. When they, infected these black men, pretty much poisoned them, I guess you can say. The attorney that represented the plaintiffs for that Tuskegee incident was Fred Gray, right? Believe he got them $10 million. So when you see now the brutal death of Freddie Gray, understand that is symbolic, because when you see this black man drug up and beat down, whenever you see Freddie Gray, that is the image that is going to come to you, and that's going to overshadow the real Fred Gray, who was a champion of the civil rights movement, who actually helped get rights back for blacks in the 60s. So do you see the symbolism? This country makes these movies to rewrite history. Right? So Fred Gray now, in your mind, in this present and in the future, is forever going to be overshadowed by a brutal murder of a young black male, as opposed to a champion of justice like Fred Gray. And that's how devious and diabolical Hollywood is. So when you look at these movies, you look at these events, understand that some of them are hoaxes. You know what I'm saying? Some of these, like Sandy Hook, no one got killed. Some of them are staged where people get killed, but it's not who they say gets killed. And some of them don't get killed at all. And some of these people actually get injured, but the names and the dates that they choose is for psychological warfare. So don't believe these stories that you see. That's why if you see these incidences, they all have patterns. The killer will kill themselves. They'll have 3 names because they're planned. So when you see something like a Freddie Gray, you have to ask yourself, if there's so many incidences of police killing black men, why do I only see a particular few? Why do I hear Mike Brown? Why do I hear Freddie Gray? Because you have to look at the names, and you have to look at history, and you have to look at when they happened. You have to look at the astrological.
Do your homework. There's always something deeper involved. Whenever you're dealing with the media, whenever you're dealing with that, there's always something deeper involved. There's always a deeper meaning.
Always.
There's always an inner, what can I say? There's always an inner secret that has to be manifested or unfolded. So just do your homework, research, read, because the knowledge they want to hide from you. The knowledge is naturally out of view for a reason, because if knowledge is given, then power is given.
Exactly.
Why would they want to give up their power? Why would they want to relinquish that? If I have power, why am I giving it to you? That means you'll take me over.
Facts. It was the first show that I think went into syndication, something like that. And a lot of people, this was a funny show, but a lot of people felt this show didn't make black people look good. But the symbolism with this show is that this show came about during a time when the real black power movement started to become big. At the turn of the century, this Moorish Science Temple, they're responsible for showing black people. The Moorish Science Temple and Noble Drew Ali were the ones that taught us that our nationality is important, and they also taught us law. Now, Amos and Andy came out around this time, and because that's the capital of the Moorish Science Temple. But it's bigger than that, because when you look at the show, the main character is called Kingfish, and he is part of a fraternal lodge. This is in the show. I believe it's called the Mystic Fraternal Order of the Seas, and its members, it's deep. So when you look at this character, Kingfish, even in the first episode, there's a court situation, because the Moors are good at court. And the main character, Kingfish, he tells Andy, he says, don't worry about it. We're protected by law. No one can harm us. And when they go to, he tells them we have jurisprudence. Now that's Moorish language. And when they go to court, they're like, yeah, I was told we can't be arrested because we have jurisprudence. I said, oh, snap. So when you look at the fact that this individual was part of a mystical order, right? And they were black, and they quoted the law, and you're like, oh man. So they had to make this movie to take away, because the membership of the Moors was growing in the Midwest, and it was growing throughout the country. And ironically, when this show came out, Noble Drew Ali died. So you have to look at Hollywood. Hollywood is more dangerous than a gun. Hollywood is more dangerous than any weapon now. So the name of the game now is perception. If you can control people's perception, then you have power. So in the description, I'm going to put more details in these 3 examples, but I just wanted to give a frame of reference as to what you're seeing, what the name of the game is. Everything you're seeing is scripted theater. In order to win this and take back your mind and your community, you have to look at Hollywood and see that this is staged.
And just to come back real quick to elaborate a little bit on the Moors, I mean, I'm sure that most of us have heard about the Moors. If you've done any studying into deeper knowledge, I'm sure that you've come across some knowledge of the Moors. But let me just tell you something about the Moors. The Moors were immensely rich. They had harems. They had silk and gold and the silver. They had everything you could imagine. They were powerful in mathematics. They were powerful in reading. They were powerful in languages. They were powerful in writing. They were the masters of calligraphy. They started that. That all came from the Moors. You understand what I'm saying? They brought civilized knowledge to the westernmost parts of Europe. Spain was almost run by Moors.
Completely.
They hated them so bad that they made the running of the bulls to symbolize the running of the Moors out of Spain.
That's heavy.
That's where that celebration comes from.
That's heavy. That's heavy.
So my whole thing is they're going to demonize anything that we can look up to and say as a community, this is a leader that we can say, wow, I want to do this or I can do this, and then anything that I put my mind to is possible. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen because that's the natural way that Hollywood has set it up to try to downplay all of our achievements, all of our success. That's what they've done, and that's what they'll continue to do.
Until we change the narrative.
The Moors were the masters of Europe. They could trek from sea to sea. They already were building ships that were going to America that they don't want to tell you about that part, though. They don't want to tell you that the Moors were actually in America before Christopher Columbus. We're not going to get into that tonight. But if you want to get deep with it, they didn't tell you that. The Moors were doing everything.
And you know in the show what the name of the order was, the Mystic Knights of the Sea.
Know your history. Do your research. Study. Read. Get active in the community. It's so important.
Dialogue.
So important for us.
That's heavy with the running out of the bulls.
That's how bad they hate us. That's how bad they hate us. They're gonna make mark a whole holiday. Oh, there's multiple holidays that are, downplaying or demeaning to us. But that's not the only one. I'm sure I could probably find about 2 or 3 more.
April Fools also making fun of the Moors. I think it was March 30th was 1492 was when the Spaniards kicked the Jews out, and April 1st they was like, look to the Moors, y'all could bounce. We have ships ready for you. You could leave on our ships. So the Moors saw the ships and they was like, all right, cool, we'll use these ships. So as they was rounded up all the Moors, ready to leave, they looked and watched the ships burn. And they burned their houses. So now the Moors were tricked. On April 1st, they had no ships and no houses and they were homeless. So that's your April Fools. So I'm telling you, it's so much. But the key is to first know it. Once you know all this, then you can start to operate from a different program. And then solutions will start coming. The right people will start coming into your mix because you're not thinking the same. And once the right people come into your mix, then you'll start creating answers like it's nothing. So that's why shows like this, I think, are necessary because it starts the conversation. And the more the conversation spreads, the easier time we'll have in combating this subtle warfare that we're under.
I definitely have to agree with you on that. And I have to say that 1,000% that knowledge is everything. You know, it's the key to life, it's the key to success, it's the key to journeying to higher realms, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially. Knowledge is the key. Gotta read, you gotta do your homework. Gotta go pick up those books, gotta go.
I'm laughing because you have to look at the as much as it's disgusting, you have to look at the brilliance of this total flip around. They take an African woman of high prominence and created a trans, what would you even call Medea? We don't even know, because on the screen it's a woman. That's heavy. If that's not some psychological warfare, I don't know what is. You got to really think about that, to the point to where millions of people will identify with this black man dressed as a woman, and the amount of effort it will take generations from now to overcome that image of what the original Medea was, it's going to be close to impossible now. That's deep. That's what we're dealing with. So don't be a passive watcher or listener, because these things are not what you see, and they have considerable damage on your psychology and your children's psychology. So with that, any last words?
It's definitely been a pleasure. I mean, this is the type of these things we've been talking about tonight. This is the type of thing that I would love to go into for, you know, an hour, 2 hours at a time, because you really want to dig deep into this kind of stuff, because it's interesting. Knowledge is interesting. When you're learning new things and when you're approaching it from a different mindset and you're trying to come to a knowledge of yourself as a black person, because we are strong. We do come from kings and queens. We are the descendants of greatness. We do come from the stars. You understand what I'm saying? We are built differently. Our bodies are stronger, yes. You know what I'm saying? And now our brains have to be just as strong, because we have to understand who we are. And then once you understand who you are, then you can start to command your universe. And you can start to make things happen in your world.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining.
It's been a pleasure. It's been beautiful. Thank you, King and Queen Radio, for having me.
And for those of you that subscribe to the channel,
Dawn's Beauty, I make all natural organic products.
She was shy at first, wanted to plug her products, you know what I'm saying?
All natural organic products made with 24 karat gold.
Where can we get that?
Got everything on the Instagram page. Dawn's Beauty is DANGE Beauty, BEAUTI. Dawn's Beauty, one word. Check me out on Instagram, check me out on Facebook. Zeffie Tolbert. I'm a scientist, a philosopher, political commentator, musician and creator, and I'm also a writer. I have a couple of published works. Check me out. Just Google me, Zeffie Tolbert, Shelly Tolbert. Do you understand? Make it official by following me on my page, and I do show love. I follow back, so come on and follow me and I'll follow you back. I love to do these types of topics. I want to get into more of these crucial issues. We're going to dive into some more, you know, spiritual talk and things like that, and just some really interesting deep topics that we're going to go into, and, you know, black history and some stories about some great black minds that have changed the way that the world moves. And, you know, I've came across a list the other day, just to make it brief, but I came across a list the other day of some black inventors and just some things that black people had accomplished that I had never even known. I mean, the list had to be at least 100 people. Names I had never even heard of, and inventions that are very common. Extremely common. And I was very shocked at the list, and I gotta get it at a later time. But this definitely is, another thing that I want to cover. Black minds of greatness, black minds that have exceeded their time, and that were ahead of their time, so that we can start to look at these figures and elevate ourselves and look up to them as role models, because we need some more role models. We need those. We can't be deprived, and we can't be completely robbed and stolen from and raped of all of the things that we need to encourage us, because then that creates a sense of despair. And what does this despair lead to? Drunkenness, overeating, violence, all the things that are prevalent in our communities that we're working on.
So become more symbol literate, people, so these things can change, because everything is right in front of you. It's a rough road, but it's not an impossible road.
Precisely.
So, thank you.
It's definitely something that we can work on and that we can do daily to try to change in not only our lives, but in the lives of those around us and our community. Just do your part. You know what I'm saying? Any small bit matters, any small bit counts. Just do the best that you can to try to gain this knowledge and try to share it with as many people as you can in your community. I'm also in the process of writing a book. My book is going to be released by summer of next year, hopefully June 2018. It's going to be entitled Honey Child. You can pick it up. Very interesting read. It's not an autobiography, but it's close.
So that'll be coming soon.
That'll be coming soon.
So we'll look forward. We'll have plenty of content. See you next show. King and Queen Radio.
Thank you so much.
Anytime. Shout out to my man Tony Space. He's gonna bring him up here as well. We did the Houston flood episode. Thanks for everyone that joins in, that subscribe. I appreciate all your comments. Any subjects that y'all want covered, let me know. I'll have another staged event video coming soon. Thank you for your time. Like I said, that's one thing you can't get back. And I will see y'all next time. Peace.